Today on the show, strategy plus action equals realizing that tech is the least of your problems. Great coaches and consultants like you have the ability to change people's lives and transform entire organizations. And your impact can often go far beyond the clients you work with. One of the reasons I love working with coaches and consultants is because of that ripple effect. This show is here to highlight your expertise and empower you with resources and new ideas to grow your business. Welcome to Strategy in Action. Anke Herrmann is on the show today, and we have a blast talking all things tech and not tech, right? Anke's amazing. She helps people, who come to her with what they think are technology problems, right? Trying to put their business online, maybe taking their one-on-one coaching and creating a course around it. And so often what they feel is, what platform do I use? What microphone do I use when I record the modules? And all these things that they think are tech issues are really not the problem because they haven't even thought through the 6 steps before, right? Who are you trying to reach? Why you're trying to reach them, why there, and why in this way. And she starts peeling back the layers for her clients just to make sure that, that piece of software that they thought they needed so badly is even the right tool for the job. But even more than that, it really gets them focused on the important aspects and the real next steps in the whole process as they build their business. And one of the big insights that comes out during this conversation that applies to all of us in business is the importance of meeting our clients where they are and the issues that they're having right now and making them feel heard and understand that this is the problem they see the most, even if maybe that's not the ultimate problem or their biggest problem, is still communicating where they are so that you can guide them through the process and get them to where they need to be. This is a fantastic episode. I know you'll love it. Let's jump in. Anke Herrmann, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
So I enjoyed so much being a part of your group and networking with folks and with you. And I'm so glad you decided to jump on and do an episode with us here because I love this topic that we both kind of came up with here to discuss today, which you of course are the perfect person to talk about. And that's really this idea that, tech is the least of your problems right now. And we all think, whether even if we're good at it, right? Like we still think that's the thing, right? And usually that's the tactic, that's the tool to try to solve something that we haven't even figured out yet, the real problem. And I love this perspective that you bring to folks. So I want to dig into this great meaty topic here with you, but give folks some background a little bit on you and right now how you're helping people overall.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm really excited to dig into the topic as well because as you know, I'm quite passionate about it. And so, I work with coaches, educators, people who have a message to share. They have an idea for something that they want to offer online, right? And then they have a vision that's clear. They know kind of what they want to build, but somehow there's a jungle between that idea and that online offer that somebody actually buys, right? And so I'm kind of the jungle guy to take them from the idea to the online offers that they want to bring to life. So it's that I guide them through the process, right? And most of the time they come to me because they feel they have a tech problem. They say, well, I want to create something online and I don't know what platform should I use, right? Sometimes people say, I want to start a podcast. What microphone should I use? So you're probably familiar with that one. And so there's always that jump to the tech. And it doesn't matter, and you've already hinted at it, it doesn't matter whether somebody is tech savvy or whether they're scared of tech. I mean, if you're scared of tech, then it's like, oh my God, I want to do this thing, but I don't know where to start. There's I don't even know what I need. There's all these people telling me different things, and there's all these platforms, and I don't know how all the pieces fit together. So that's one group of people who get stuck there and feel, oh God, the tech is really what's holding me back. And then you've got the other people who actually quite like tinkering, right? And so they often self-identify as, I know just enough to be dangerous, right? And they are getting lost in the rabbit hole because they spend all their time tinkering with platforms and tools and toys and still don't get their idea put together and brought to life. So either way, either one thinks that the tech is where the issue is.
Oh yeah, it's procrastination on both sides. It's just the two
Absolutely.
different extremes that are it's either fear of it or love of it. The result's kind of the same because you're not getting the real stuff done. And I love this idea too on both sides of that, right? And so what's sort of step one for folks when, you realize very quickly if they've come to you for this problem they think they have, what is, how do you approach that, right? How do you kind of tell them to tap the brakes a little bit and get into what's actually important?
Yeah. I call it the deep dive, and I always start there, right? And it's about, I take what people come to me with as a starting point, an invitation to explore and not the task list, right? Because I've seen it and interesting enough, it shows that you can actually see this play out everywhere. I've seen it first in my work as a software developer. So when I first got into software development and I had the first projects and you speak to clients, and I got to see really early that the way people express what they need wasn't really helpful to actually build something, that there is this step in the middle. And some projects, you have business analysts that get hired to do that job. Hardly anybody actually does a good job at it. So they always just write down what the client tells them, and then people go off and build that. And in the end, oh, well, that's not really what we need. And everybody's frustrated, right? So I really saw so early that, wait, there's a step in between, right? So the first time I saw it in the project with an Australian bank, their home loan department, right? And so my job was to figure out what they needed. And I had this lovely man who was responsible for taking on these home loan applications and putting them into the system. And I remember talking to him and saying, okay, so once you're done with your job, what's the next step? And he goes, oh, then I send it over to Jane. And I'm like, okay. So who's Jane? And he goes, oh, Jane sits over there. Okay. So what happens when Jane goes on holiday? Oh, well, then Mary gets it. And I'm like, oh, all I was after was a role, right? But he couldn't, it took the world to dig that out of him, right? And I was getting a little frustrated. And all of a sudden it hit me thinking, wait, if he was any good at that, he'd be a software developer and not a guy who works in the back, right? So that's my job, to tickle that out of him, right? And I think that is the part. And I've seen it, when I first started my own business, I started a sewing business, have to let your creative side out at some point. And I saw it there too, right? I made dance costumes for flamenco dancers, and flamenco dancers would come and say, I want a skirt that's like a pencil skirt, really narrow down to the knee, and then it flares out, it has all the ruffles and that. And I'm like, wait, if the skirt's that narrow, you can't dance with it, right? And they go, oh, yeah, I never thought of that. I'm like, well, you know what? You don't want a pencil skirt. You want a costume that doesn't make you look fat on stage. And then they go, oh, well, yeah, right. But if we know that that's the problem, well, now we have other tools to play with. We can work with different materials. We can work with color and proportions and cut. So we have a whole other toolbox available to give them a costume that makes them look slim on stage and still allows them to move, right? And that's a classic case. And the same thing happens when somebody goes, I want a button for people to sign up somewhere, right? You don't want a button. you need a way for people to sign up for an event, for a lead magnet, for a course, and for your clients to get what they've just purchased, what they need, when they need it, where they need it, right? So, and for me to dig down to what's your version of that costume that doesn't make you look fat on stage, like that's the first step. And that's where people see that, oh, well, actually, she asked a whole lot of questions that have nothing to do with tech. That's when they get a first taste how little tech there actually is as part of the solution to their tech problem.
Yeah, that's so fantastic. And that's such a great example of why we need a coach, why we need consultants, why we go to the experts when they're the good ones, right? Because they're going to dig into those. Well, what's the meaning behind the meaning behind the meaning? Like what's that end result? And we can take, the same advice even when we're sitting there doing something for ourselves, and maybe we find ourselves either spending too much time in the tech because we love it, or spending too much time in it because we hate it and are fighting. Either one. Maybe that's the point and a great trigger to really look up and go, okay, hang on. What am I really trying to accomplish? What's the end result of that?
Yep.
But I think even deeper is exactly what you pointed out, and why it's so important to get that outside perspective, because a lot of times we don't even know what we don't know, right?
That's the point. That's exactly the point, right? Nobody does that on purpose. Like nobody, I always say, look, when something, and it doesn't really matter what it is, but it's really obvious in the tech field, when it feels hard, you're skipping steps, right? And so it literally always comes down to, how can I break down the steps ahead? Now, the problem is nobody skips steps on purpose just because I think I can. Like you skip the steps because you don't know they're there, right? And that's what happens when you don't know a lot about, and that's the same thing with the dressmaking clients, when they don't know about dress constructions and pattern design, and well, then all they know is if they've heard that pencil skirts are flattering, right? And it's the same thing that happens when you hear somewhere in a Facebook group and people go, oh, an all-in-one platform does it all for you. Well, then that's what you think you need, right? Because you just don't know all the other things that are in between. And every single time somebody feels they're struggling on the tech front and you go, okay, so let's just imagine I've just clicked the button, right? We're talking the magic button. I've clicked the button. I've just bought your thing. What happens now? And they go, well, they just enroll. Okay, what does that mean? Like, what am I going to see? Now that my payment's gone through, what happens now? And I always get, like literally always, there's like, well, that's a good question, right? So nobody has thought through the actual sequence of steps to the level of detail that is required to make the tech kind of options easy. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's like, I just kind of enroll, but what does that mean? Right?
Right. And so, we have to step back and go, okay, wait a second. The last time I bought a course, I clicked that button. What happened? Where did I go?
Yep.
Like when I didn't get an immediate email, I lost my flipping mind because I just gave X amount of dollars and then it went into the ether, right? And it was going to be, and then a day goes by and I haven't got a notification. I'm clicking refund. I'm doing everything. I'm calling my bank. And so we put ourselves in that situation, certainly like what you're bringing up, just to have the basics in there. Like, okay, this is critical that this happens and this happens. But then even another step to having someone like you by their side and guiding them through that jungle is to go, okay, now how do we make that experience of those steps amazing? How do we make them more revenue generating? How do we make them really get, results from this program, and on all of these steps? And that's when things just start going, okay, and then it's just like, well, sure, we'll use this tech and that tech.
It's funny how none of what you talked about had anything to do with tech, right? And it's so typical. Like not long ago, somebody goes, oh, can I just I want to start a mastermind, right? Should I use Slack or Telegram? And I'm like, wait, that was the question, right? And I'm like, okay, wait. First of all, okay, mastermind for whom? Well, for my existing clients, I'm offering this, done for you package, and I want to add some value. And I'm like, have you asked them? She goes, no. Oh, okay. Well, maybe that might be your first step, right? Before you build anything, make sure people actually want it, right? So sell it first. That's always the good step, just good point, just place to start. Now, but okay, let's assume people want it. Now, how do you see this work? She goes, well, I don't know, like we'd kind of meet on, okay, you'd meet on Zoom on a monthly, weekly, whatever basis. Okay, yeah, well, that makes sense. And I go, so how do you imagine people interacting with each other? Do you want them to get in touch with each other, to talk to each other, like without you? And she goes, not really. Okay, so what do you want Slack or Telegram for then? Because that's what they're there for, right? So, but that's the thing. People like jump to, because somebody said, oh, we're using Slack for this thing, without thinking through what they actually want to create. But it's almost the same if you think about going to a hardware store, right? And I always think like there's two types of shoppers, right? If you love tinkering around a hardware shop, like this is like your perfect Saturday outtake. You just go and you just have a little sniff around all the stuff that's there, and you love all the tools. Like that'd be me, right? So and you could just get a buzz, and you get ideas from the stuff you see, right? Happens to me in fabric shop, happens to me in hardware stores, right? But there's also a lot of people, and that's the same in your like online platform tech shop that's out there, right? All the options. If you enjoy this thing, yeah, you can spend your whole day there. Well, which might not always be the best use of your time, but at least you get ideas and but if you think, oh boy, a day in a hardware store is like the worst thing, well, if that's you and that's most people who aren't really into tech, then you wouldn't go into a hardware store and somebody comes up to you and say, hey, how can I help you? And you go, well, I want to build something. Okay. What do you want to build? Well, I don't really know. Nobody can even help you, right? But if you go in and say, well, I want to build a shelf, wooden shelf, I want it inside. I want to kind of store these things on it. So it needs to be able to carry that weight. It needs to fit in this corner. Well, now you can go to the hardware store and tell somebody what you want. And they go, well, go to this aisle. That's where you find the wood and the tools for wood and the right screws. And somebody can even help you, right? What I'm saying is like, well, what are you trying to store? Is a shelf even the best thing? Is a shelf even the best? Like you can take it a step back still, to say, well, is a shelf even the best way to store this thing, right? But you see where I'm going with this? It's like, if you haven't got a clue what it is you're trying to do, then you get lost in the hardware store, right? And if you don't know what you're trying to build, then you're going to certainly get lost in the tech jungle.
Oh yeah, and so much money, so much time, so many resources just fly away and fly away and fly away when you're in that area of uncertainty. But I also love something you shared with me before we started recording when it comes to kind of positioning how you help people, and that, because you had this, insight and realization very quickly of like, tech is not your problem, so you wanted to like not let people, even come to you for tech, but then you realized, okay, but that's how I'm going to help them, right? To share with that perspective and that insight that kind of led you down that road for folks.
Yeah. I mean, the whole like Taming the Tech Monster is the name of my book. That's why, the whole tech monster, people kind of think of tech monster, they think of me, right? So I have had a love-hate relationship with the tech monster for a very long time, because in my mind, from what we've just sort of discussed, it's like, well, yeah, tech's the least of your problems, right? You need to think about what it is you want to build, and then dig deeper and think, how can I make this more efficient now? And then you can already almost tell the things that you want to offer and and what you want to create, it almost translate into functionality that you're going to look for in platforms. So you then go to your hardware store and know what you're asking for. But I can talk about that until the cows come home. When somebody feels that tech is the thing that holds them back, I'm not doing them a favor by and I did this for a very long time, to say, well, just go away. Tech's not your problem. It's the last thing you should worry about. And that's not helpful when tech is the thing where people feel the pain, where they really feel like that's the thing where it's overwhelming, and just the pure volume of number of options and different approaches are like, and if they feel that that's the thing that holds them back and really stands in the way of them bringing their idea to life, then I finally got to see, well, it's just not fair or right or even intelligent to just kind of brush that off like that. So that's why people usually come to me, because they feel they have a tech monster to tame.
Yeah, and I really want to call this out, because it's such an important lesson for anyone in their business, is to meet their client where they are.
Exactly.
Right? Like, you can help them, but all the client can see is this in front of their face, this issue, this pain point, this problem right in front of them. And until someone goes, okay, I hear you. This is your problem. Like, let's sit down and dig into that. If you've got an octopus on your face and someone is trying to tell you that the octopus is not really your problem, you're going to find somebody who is going to address the octopus on your face. Yeah,
I love it.
It might be
that one.
Yeah, it might be that there's a reason the octopus is there, because you took garlic pills and octopus love garlic. I don't know. And sure, you can get to that point so you don't end up with a second octopus on your face. But until you can kind of grab them and go like, okay, I hear you. Let's get this taken care of. Okay. And that's such an important lesson. And just like these other things, we miss them in our own business a lot of times, because we know the 12 steps, down the line that need to happen, but we forget, a couple in the middle, some step 5A and step 5B that people who aren't experts don't know. So I love that realization that you had.
Yeah. And the unexpected side effect is that people always find themselves pleasantly surprised, right? Every single time. And I'm almost like keeping track of how long somebody takes until they say, oh, I had no idea how much fun this would be. Because people are always surprised, because it's like, I didn't realize how little tech there was involved and how much fun this is, right? I mean, I knew it all along, right? Progress is addictive. Creativity is fun, right? Seeing their idea come to life is fun. So of course it was going to be fun, but, so they kind of get pleasantly surprised by it, and that makes my work really satisfying. So.
Oh yeah, because I mean, that's so fulfilling when it's coming, and then you see that realization. That's so great. But it's great for business, right? Because they associate that realization and that aha with you, as they should, because you're the one got them through that jungle and realized to realize, hey, this is an enjoyable process, and now I can go do it again and do it a lot faster. And I actually want to, because I felt this yay from the whole thing, instead of that fighting the monster, like, all these years.
Yeah. And it takes, I love that. It like that shift in people, and I get it all the time. I go, oh my God, like, you take all the stress and anxiety out of it. Right. And so, because I can see I've seen people have like panic attacks come up when they see an error message. Right. And I used to say what looks like a tech problem almost hardly ever is. These days, I say what looks like a tech problem never is. Right. And people go, yeah, but there's error messages. Yeah, right? But I've sat there more than once that somebody gets really anxious, like you can tell it, like literally panic attacks come. There's an error message. And I'm looking, we're sharing the screen. I'm looking at exactly the same error message. They have a panic attack and I'm going, oh, well, that's interesting. You know, for me, it sparks curiosity and it kind of gets my problem solving mind like, ooh, this is going to be interesting, right? And they kind of have a panic attack. Same error message, right? So it's not about the pixels on the screen. It's about the stuff you make it mean. And I think when I'm working with somebody, and sometimes it's teaching, sometimes like, you know, I've stopped making elephants dance because I do recognize that some people's minds just don't go there, right? They just cannot. And then I'm like, well, why don't I just do it? Like, you know, no, don't you waste your time trying to kind of, you know, learn an ancient Greek when languages aren't your thing, right? So, but a lot of time I always try to encourage people to kind of learn at least enough to be a good client for someone, right? Not to turn into a tech specialist or anything, but to just like you would hire a financial advisor and you wouldn't go, here, take my accounts. I just don't want to deal with money. Like, it's just not my thing. No, like, hopefully you wouldn't do that. But with tech, it's amazing. You know how people like, here, have my password. Like, I just don't want to know, right? So I always encourage people to understand, at least on a big picture level, what they've got, where it is, you know, make sure you own your domain. Like, I've had that too, you know. The guy who sold me my industrial sewing machine, turns out he didn't own his domain. Oops, you know, and he had it on his car, on his shop, everywhere. It wasn't his. And the guy who owned it didn't release it. Oops, right? So it's like, don't be that client who gets ripped off, who gets, you know, sold stuff that they don't need, who is also annoying as a client because they have no idea what's involved in things. So they ask for stuff that isn't reasonable, right? So, you know, learn at least enough to be a good client for somebody, right? And so when people try and sort of understand something, you know, I considered my job to connect, you know, something unknown to something known so that they go, oh, I get it, right? And so what that does, when they have a few experiences like that, they go from, oh my God, this is scary to, let me see what I can figure this out, right? And that translates in other areas of life. Really fascinating what people do outside of the tech space once they realize that they have what it takes to figure this stuff out, if they don't let the fear of it paralyze them.
Oh, yeah. And I was having the same thought when you talked about the error message. You know, it's such a great metaphor for life and how we approach life. This, you know, the same events happen to two different people, and one person shuts down, life is horrible, this always happens to me. The other person goes, oh, cool, what can I learn from this? What can I get? How do I navigate this? And imagine how awesome I'm going to be on the other side of this. And that's everything, you know? So I love that you've seen that come about and manifest itself, you know, outside of even how you've helped people there with tech to show up in the rest of their lives. I love it. I love that stuff.
Yeah, no,
that's awesome.
Me
so
too.
How do people reach out to you? How does somebody work with you, and when should they reach out? Like, I need Anke right now.
Well, when they need it, like, there's kind of a really clear line in the sand, right? And it's when somebody is still wondering, do I want to do this? Well, I'm not really sure yet who I want to work with. What do I actually want to offer? You're not ready for me. Because my mind is so into building mode, right? That by the time you've thought about it, I'm in my mind already, okay, well, this, I'm going to do it this way. And then if they come back next month and go, oh, well, I'm not sure, maybe I kind of want to work, I'm like, oh, you know, so that's a waste of everybody's time and energy. So my clients are really passionate and they're clear on, this is the message, this is what I wanted, this is what I want to bring into the world, right? It can, the shape it takes can change and evolve, whatever, I don't really care. But they need to know for sure that this is what they want to build, right? And be prepared to do the building, right? If somebody wants, one of my pet peeves are the 6-step proven success formulas, right? Because in my experience, building a business is a creative process. It's more like building software. It's an iterative process. It's a series of experiments, right? So they are, I call it tornado process, right? So there are phases and steps that are sequential, but there's a lot of experimenting and testing and reviewing and doing something that you've not done before. So if somebody wants a 6-step proven, paint by numbers, I don't believe that ever works. So I will certainly not work with people. Like, if that's what somebody expects, like, you're not for me, that's for sure, So, but when somebody's ready to build and say, well, okay, this is my vision. I know I have my vision clear. I just don't know how to get through the jungle between my vision and what I've got in mind, then I would say, come to me and come early. Don't buy a tool, like don't sign up for a year of a subscription of some tool before we've done the deep dive, before we know, because it's always better to do that analysis and deep dive first. So we're actually solving the right problem rather than the first problem, and make the tool choice afterwards. And so I have my own software platform, that I will always be discerning about whether that's right for somebody or not. So I'm not going to ever shove it down somebody's throat where I think, well, they should really get something else. But if it is a right fit, it's there. And I have a 1-year mentoring program that I'm running with a colleague. And for people who feel that they have built something that they've sold and that's successful, and they've gotten it off the ground with low tech, simple tech, no tech, and find the same simple setup that got them off the ground now bites them in the butt and hinders them from growing further. So that's the one-to-one work with people I do, to help them set up the systems that get them ready to serve more people without building a hamster wheel and still offering a 5-star experience for their clients. So tamingthetechmonster.com is probably the easiest way, where they get a free copy of my book. And you're in my world, and you can always get in touch.
I love it. That's fantastic. And I love that idea of the reality, and you being honest with that process that, we all need to go through. It's just not a sellable idea. A lot of times we want to buy the 3-step process and you're done. And it's also not the opposite. It's also not like, well, how are you going to help me? I don't know. We'll figure it out. It's not that either, right? It is a process, but no, at step 3, now we're going to take in data. We're going to see results and adjust before we go on, or maybe even decide which thing is step 4 for you, based on
exactly
those results. And I love that. I really do. So tamingthetechmonster.com is the best place to go and find out more and get into your world. I appreciate you being on, Anke. This has been fantastic.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Always happy to talk about the Tech Monster.
Yes, indeed. And we'll see you all next time. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of this show. If you want help creating authority-building video content or even a client-generating show of your own, go to MediaLeadsCo.com and let's connect. I'll talk to you soon on the next Strategy in Action.